They are immortals, born across ages and continents in times of war and peace, of faith and despair. They are not alone. There are others like them, some noble, some cruel. For centuries, they have lived among us, warriors, lovers, wanderers. They have battled each other through the ages, with holy ground their only refuge. Through endless lives and countless battles, they seek purpose, redemption, or dominion. They cannot die unless you take their head, and with it, their power. In the end, there can be only one.
The church was bathed in an atmosphere of solemn calm. Methos, Duncan, and Darius were gathered around the small wooden table that had hosted their first assembly. The priest had served them an herbal tea, but the cups remained untouched, each man absorbed by the exchange to come. Kronos won't stop until he gets what he wants. Methos broke the silence, his voice tinged with weariness. His Pandora plan is the height of his madness, an attempt to subdue mortals through their fear. He believes he can control them as one manipulates a herd. Fear is a powerful weapon, but it always ends up turning against its master. Kronos underestimates the strength of human resilience, replied Darius, his blue eyes marked by wisdom. Duncan, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, intervened. Methos, we will prevent him from executing this plan. But why do you think he would put it on hold? Because he hates me more than anything. For him, this has become personal. He will seek revenge, and to do that, he will try to strike where it hurts the most. With you, with me, with Aélis. Then we must remain vigilant. We have the advantage, as long as he doesn't know where she is. Methos slowly nodded, but his gaze remained dark. Kronos isn't stupid. He knows I won't return to my apartment right away, but he will find a way. He always finds a way. A heavy silence settled. Darius placed a soothing hand on his friend's shoulder, his gesture full of discreet solicitude. We are united, Methos. That is our strength. He won't be able to break us if we remain solidary. The old immortal raised his head and met their gazes. For a moment, he seemed less defensive. Then let's prepare ourselves, because this time, he won't stop until he has spread chaos. And we will be ready to stop him, Darius said, slightly inclining his head. The silence that followed seemed to mark a fragile pause in the surrounding tension. Methos grabbed the cup of herbal tea in front of him and brought it to his lips, as if clinging to an illusory normalcy. Duncan watched them in silence, arms crossed, a flicker of determination in his eyes. He finally stood up and grabbed his coat, breaking the heavy atmosphere with an abrupt movement. We should go, he said, looking at Methos. The latter slowly nodded, but his gaze remained veiled, as if he was still weighing the shadows of his thoughts. He got up with calculated slowness, mechanically putting on his long coat. As he followed Duncan toward the door, Darius stepped forward calmly and placed a firm but calming hand on his arm. The gesture, discreet but filled with solicitude, interrupted his momentum. Stay for a moment. I'd like to talk to you. Duncan stopped halfway, exchanging a look with Darius, then nodded in silence. I'll wait for you outside. He left the church, leaving the two men alone in the peaceful but charged atmosphere of the building. Methos hesitated for a moment, his eyes scrutinizing the priest's face, as if anticipating a discussion he wasn't sure he wanted to have. "If this is for another morality lecture, I'm warning you, I'm at my maximum sermon capacity for today," he said with a strained smile. Darius didn't pick up on the irony. His gaze, calm but serious, lingered on his friend for a moment. "It's not morality you need, Methos, and you know it." The old immortal looked away slightly. "I'm fine, Darius," he replied softly. "You're lying," the latter replied with disarming gentleness. Methos pursed his lips. He had spent centuries avoiding gazes that said too much, but with Darius, it was impossible. He saw in his eyes that he already knew everything. "You know," the priest murmured, "sometimes it's not the enemy in front of us who is the most difficult to face, but the one we carry within us. Kronos," he continued, "he's not just an external threat to you. He is a reminder, an echo of who you used to be. You think I don't know that? He is everything I've spent centuries trying to escape, and now he's here, taunting me, ready to destroy everything just to remind me of who I was." Darius approached, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder, his gesture charged with quiet strength. "That's not who you are, Methos. Not now, not for a long time. Kronos is a shadow, a reminiscence of a past you chose to leave behind. He only has the power over you that you give him." The latter shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. "You talk as if it were that simple, but look what he did to Aélis. He broke her, Darius, and I was his accomplice. I played the role he expected of me. All that to save her, and despite everything, I wonder if she can ever recover from what we did to her." "What she went through is an ordeal that few people could overcome without losing pieces of themselves," he said gently. "But you never wanted her to suffer. And what she feels toward you, it's not as simple as hatred. She hates me. She told me clearly. She sees me as Kronos' accomplice, and honestly, I can't blame her. Anger can be a facade. What she feels may not be that simple." Methos frowned, his jaws clenched. He looked away, his thoughts swirling in a silent chaos. "And what am I supposed to do with all this?" Darius took a measured breath before answering. "I think there are wounds she can't name, and it's up to you to give her the necessary space so she can find her own answers." The old immortal remained silent, absorbed by his friend's words. The idea that Aélis' anger might be masking something else left him circumspect. But deep down, that wasn't the only thing troubling him. He cast a furtive glance at Darius. As always, his friend had expressed neither reproach nor judgment, not a word harsher than necessary, not a look filled with disappointment. But perhaps it was worse this way. He would have almost preferred an accusation, something tangible to cling to. Instead, there was only this implacable calm, this unfathomable patience, and Methos didn't know which was more unbearable. The idea that Darius might genuinely not hold it against him, or the idea that he had simply chosen not to say so. Darius was counting on him. He was counting on him, and he wasn't measuring up, and maybe this time he couldn't fix it. "You did what you had to do to protect her. It is not up to her to bear your guilt, nor is it up to you to bear the sole responsibility for her wounds." Methos slowly raised his eyes to his friend, reading in his gaze a depth of understanding he found nowhere else. "How do you do it?" he asked in a low voice. "How do you bear all this?" Darius smiled gently, but his eyes betrayed an ancient sadness. "I don't bear it alone, and neither do you, my friend." Their gazes remained locked for a moment, and Methos felt a part of his tension dissipate. Darius, with his silent strength, reminded him that he was not alone in this fight, that he had allies and, most importantly, friends. "Thank you," he murmured, sincerely this time. The priest nodded gently, releasing his shoulder with a peaceful expression. "Go on. Join Duncan." And remember that no matter what happens, you don't have to face this alone. Methos managed a smile, light but true, before turning away and leaving the church. The burnt warehouse stood like a charred carcass, its metallic frame twisted by the heat. Methos and Duncan advanced cautiously among the debris, their steps raising clouds of ashes and dust. The acrid smell of burnt wood mixed with that of chemicals still lingered, saturating the air and making the atmosphere oppressive. The old immortal crouched near a pile of rubble and picked up a piece of melted plastic. He examined it briefly before throwing it away with an annoyed sigh. "Nothing exploitable here," he declared. "Kronos wiped everything clean. He's methodical, I'll give him that." Duncan, standing a few feet away, scanned the surroundings with calculated intensity. "He didn't do all that just to cover his tracks," he replied. "It's a diversion. He wants us to waste our time here while he prepares something else." Methos stood up, a bitter grimace on his face. "You're probably right, and that means he's already one step ahead of us." Without another word, they left the warehouse, their silence heavy with concern. The falling night enveloped Paris in a dark veil, and the two immortals instinctively headed toward Joe Dawson's bar. This discreet place, a familiar refuge, offered them a rare space for respite and information. Nestled in a little frequented street, Joe's bar exuded a cozy atmosphere, contrasting with the city's hustle. Behind the counter, Dawson, Duncan's watcher, was wiping a glass with a mechanical gesture. His gray hair and beard framed a face marked by the years, and his clear eyes observed the room with a quiet acuity. His gaze lit up slightly when he spotted Duncan, followed by Methos. Joe was more than just an observer to Duncan. The two men shared an unlikely friendship, born despite the strict rules of the Watchers that forbade any direct contact with the immortals they monitored. As for Methos, Joe had long known about his immortality and his role within the organization, under the identity of Adam Pearson. He was one of the few who knew the truth about the immortal. Methos had knowingly infiltrated the ranks of the Watchers, figuring there was no better place to hide. By becoming one of them, taking on the task of researching immortals, he ensured he would never be cataloged in the Chronicles and maintained his mythical status, the one no one hunts because no one believes he exists. A strategic masterstroke. "Always good to see you, Mac," the Watcher said, setting down the glass. "And you, Methos, I assume you're not here for small talk," he continued, seeing his serious expression. After a few greetings, they settled at a table in a remote corner. Joe poured them glasses of whiskey before lowering his voice to start the conversation. "Kronos, huh?" he muttered, leaning back in his chair. "I can see what I can get from his Watcher. According to my initial info, he recently left Paris. Give me a few days and I might know more." Duncan nodded, his gaze serious. "Every piece of information counts, Joe, but we don't have much time." Dawson stared at Methos for a moment before continuing, hesitatingly. "Kronos is a big deal. Are you really sure you want to mess with him?" The immortal set his glass down with measured slowness. His green eyes, usually full of irony, had frozen over. "It's not a choice," he replied in a sharp voice. A silence settled, reflecting the menacing shadow that Kronos cast over their future. Aélis had taken several days to make up her mind. Not whether to run away, not whether to stay, but to reply. The phone lying on her nightstand seemed to weigh heavier than her suitcase. Since leaving Paris, her parents had called twice, sent 4 messages, and left a voicemail where her sister asked if she had embarked on a spiritual retreat with her mysterious Parisian priest. The tone was mocking, but not that much. The young woman sighed, her back against the white wall of her room, her knees drawn up to her chest. She couldn't tell them the truth, not just because they wouldn't understand, but because she didn't understand it herself yet. And she didn't forget her mother's look the last time they had seen each other. That worried crease between her eyebrows when she had mentioned a man of the cloth. That silent suspicion behind the smiles. No, she had to find something else. Something plausible, neutral, distant. Not too exotic. Her mother would love to visit. Not too apparently dangerous. Her father would send her newspaper articles every morning. She looked for a compromise. Tajikistan. She almost smiled at the thought. Far enough, vague enough, and most importantly, no chance of anyone saying, "Hey, how about we come spend a weekend with you?" She dialed her parents' number. Her throat tightened slightly. It wasn't about lying, just simplifying, softening what was too hard to say, and that she knew how to do. Her mother picked up after 2 rings. "Aélis? My God, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mom, really. I'm sorry I didn't call back sooner. I got an opportunity, a little unexpected." She closed her eyes, the script well rehearsed. "A publishing house offered me a temporary position abroad. 3 months minimum, maybe more, proofreading translations for a cultural project. In Tajikistan." A silence on the line. "Then, in Tajikistan? Where exactly is that?" "Central Asia. It's beautiful. Lots of mountains, very quiet." She invented the landscapes. The cramped office, the friendly colleagues, a small market in the morning, and black tea in the afternoon. "It's a bit isolated, but I'm well lodged and I get signal from time to time. I'll send you some photos if you want." "But why so far? We would have liked to see you before you left." Aélis pursed her lips. "It happened very fast. I didn't have time. And besides, it's temporary. I'll be back." "And Noe?" her mother suddenly asked, in a softer tone. A beat. She swallowed, looked away toward the narrow window. "It's complicated. With the distance, we're taking a break." Break. The word sounded false even to her own ears. But it was easier than explaining that she had run away without warning, without a goodbye. That she had disappeared from the life of a good man, and she didn't even know exactly why. "But I'm doing fine," she added quickly. "I promise, I just need to refocus, and this project is perfect for that." She heard her mother breathe softly on the other end of the line, as if she wanted to believe this version, as if she chose to believe it. "You keep me updated?" "Of course." They hung up. Aélis put the phone down without moving. She had lied. Not about everything, but enough to feel hollow. And yet she felt relieved. She could stay here without being searched for, without worrying anyone, without having to explain what she didn't understand yet, without having to say that what she was experiencing sometimes felt like a gentle form of uprooting. The days that followed were tense for the Immortals. The wait for the information promised by Joe was compounded by a series of strange and provocative messages sent by Kronos. These gifts, as he seemed to call them, were delivered at unpredictable times and in unexpected places. At their hotel, in Joe's bar, or even slipped into Duncan's car. The content of these deliveries was unsettling. Decapitated Playmobil figures, sometimes neatly lined up, sometimes arranged in grotesque postures, appeared accompanied by hastily scribbled enigmatic notes. "The game has just begun. The pieces are falling one by one. I'm watching you." Duncan, holding one of the small mutilated toys between his fingers, burst out. "It's a macabre joke, that's all. He's trying to make us lose our cool." Methos, sitting nonchalantly in an armchair, but with tense features, retorted in an acidic tone. "It's not just a joke. It's vintage Kronos. Childish, deranged, and terribly effective." The anxiety rising in him was palpable, although he tried to hide it behind his usual sarcasm. For Duncan, irritation was taking over. These absurd threats only strengthened his desire to put an end to Kronos' actions. A few days later, They returned to Joe's bar upon the latter's summons. After closing the door behind them, the Watcher invited them to sit at the usual table and served them drinks before leaning forward. I was able to get some info from Kronos' Watcher. He murmured, as if saying the name aloud might attract attention. It seems he's hiding in a manor in the Ardennes, an isolated, hard-to-access place, perfect for someone like him. Duncan nodded, already ready to act. We leave tomorrow at dawn. Methos seemed less enthusiastic, but he simply nodded. Joe placed a firm hand on Duncan's shoulder, managing a half-smile despite the worry he was trying to hide. Be careful. After all, we haven't finished tasting all the bottles in this bar yet. And believe me, there are still a few that are really worth the detour, he said with an anxious look, his gaze briefly sweeping over each of them as if trying to etch the moment into his memory. His voice, slightly trembling despite a facade of a smile, betrayed a latent fear of perhaps never seeing them again. The drive to the manor, indicated by Joe, was long and silent. Duncan kept his hands tightly gripped on the steering wheel, focused, while Methos cast furtive glances out the window, lost in thought. When they finally arrived, they found an imposing but dilapidated building, surrounded by a dense forest. Inside, everything seemed to indicate that Kronos had recently occupied the premises. Leftover meals, scattered papers, and even a weapon carelessly left on a table seemed to confirm the immortal's presence. But after a few hours of methodical searching, it became clear that no one was there. "It's a setup," Duncan growled, throwing a chair against a wall. "He wanted us to come here." Methos examined a scribbled sheet on which the words were illegible, but one sentence jumped out. "You are so predictable." "He's playing with us," Methos breathed, his shoulders hunched. Duncan nodded, clenching his fists. "And he's buying time." Kronos was jubilant at having successfully lured Methos and Duncan away from the capital for a few hours. Seizing this opportunity to sow chaos in his own way, he entered Darius's church at nightfall, looking as casual as he was frightening. His tall silhouette advanced with a light step, but every movement exuded an implicit threat. Darius, standing near the altar, calmly looked up at him, his face marked by an unwavering serenity. "Kronos," he said with a composed voice, "to what do I owe the honor of your visit?" The latter slowly approached, his eyes scrutinizing every detail of the church, like a predator assessing a new hunting ground. He let his fingers trail over the wood of the pews, his mocking smile widening with every step. "A consecrated place, huh? A sanctuary. I wonder, Darius, how firmly this rule is engraved in stone." The priest remained still, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture as peaceful as a calm lake. "You know as well as I do that you cannot fight here," he replied with assurance. "Me, perhaps, but who could prevent a mortal from transgressing that rule? After all, they are just men, weak and malleable," Kronos replied, his smile taking on a malevolent gleam. He approached further, until he was a few centimeters from the priest, his gaze burning with a glacial intensity. "You know what fascinates me, Darius? It's that you hide behind these walls, behind this faith, as if it could protect you. But nothing is certain, not even here. This place does not need protection. It is men like you who make it sacred, by respecting its nature." A cold burst of laughter escaped Kronos. He backed away slightly, his face hardening. "Respect? Is that what you call respect? What I see is a man who has renounced his true nature. You were a conqueror, a warrior, and now you are reduced to preaching before terrified beings." Darius remained unperturbed, but his eyes shone with a glimmer of conviction. "I chose to dedicate myself to life, not destruction, and you, Kronos. How many more centuries will it take for you to understand that the death you sow will leave you with nothing? No kingdom, no legacy, only emptiness. Kronos narrowed his eyes, his smile freezing slightly. He turned his head, watching the candles burning peacefully around them. Life, death, they are just cycles. What matters is the power you wield over them. The weak pray to be spared. The strong take what they want. Everything else is just an illusion. Darius inclined his head slightly, his features marked by profound sadness. Perhaps you are right, Kronos. But then, what is left for you? A handful of shadows who follow you out of fear. A solitary existence marked by hatred. You believe you dominate the world, but you are a prisoner of your own chains. The warrior clenched his fists, his smile becoming strained. He stepped back, as if to protect himself from the echo of Darius's words, but he quickly recovered, giving a forced sneer. You are as boring as ever, a man of faith who thinks he can reach me with words. He turned back, stopping one last time at the church entrance. But don't worry, I didn't come for that. Not yet. He turned on his heel and left the church, leaving a chilling tension in the air. Darius, alone again, closed his eyes for an instant. His thoughts turned toward his friends. The first few weeks for Aélis at the monastery were a constant struggle. Perched in a remote valley, cut off from the world, the place exuded a serenity that everything in her rejected. The silence, the unchanging rhythm of the days, the peaceful gazes of the monks, all of it seemed to contradict the turmoil within her. She couldn't appease that dull anger, that mix of incomprehension and resentment she felt toward those she had considered her friends. They had known, and they had let things happen, as if she were nothing more than a pawn they were watching from afar, waiting for her to break before revealing the truth. Under the strict guidance of Master Sun Tzu, she submitted to intensive training, punctuated by meditation, body discipline, and weapon practice. Yet despite her efforts, she struggled to progress. Handling the sword felt cold, mechanical, alien to her body. Her strikes lacked precision. Her postures were often shaky. The master said nothing, content to correct her with a look or a movement of his hand, but she felt his impatience rise as her errors repeated. The worst was meditation. Sitting, clearing her mind, finding inner calm. She couldn't do it. As soon as she closed her eyes, her thoughts assailed her. Noé, the way she had treated him, her unexplained absence, the looks on Methos's and Darius's faces, one veiled with guilt, the other with sadness, her helplessness against Kronos, all of it swirled within her like a storm she didn't know how to quell. One evening, as she was preparing to fall asleep in her austere cell, a novice knocked on her door, holding a neatly wrapped box that he handed to her with a perplexed expression. She opened the package under the attentive gaze of Sun Tzu, who had joined her, and discovered a doll, its pale, frozen face framed by tangled brown hair. Around its neck, a red ribbon was tied in an elegant bow. "A doll?" she murmured, intrigued but uncomprehending. Sun Tzu remained silent for a moment, his gaze hardening slightly. "Does this mean anything to you?" he finally asked. "No, I don't see it," she replied, her heart beating slightly faster at his grave demeanor. Sun Tzu inhaled deeply. "Darius recently sent me a message. He told me about threats that Kronos had addressed to him, Methos, and Duncan. Similar objects carrying implicit messages. I fear this means Kronos knows where you are." The weight of those words fell upon Aélis, dispelling the faint sense of security she had begun to feel. "So, he could come here?" "Perhaps. Or perhaps he only wishes to make you lose your serenity," Sun Tzu replied, his tone becoming calm again. "But know this, as long as you remain here, you are under my protection and that of this place. he will not cross these walls without consequences. That night, she couldn't find sleep. Her mind wandered restlessly, haunted by memories and the fear she refused to admit. But beyond that dread, another emotion was slowly growing within her. A form of cold anger. Kronos was toying with her. He was tracking her like a predator, certain of his victory. She refused to be his prey. At dawn, she showed up for training earlier than usual, her gaze hard, her jaw clenched. When Sun Tzu handed her a sword, she took it without a word, determined not to be the same anymore. In the following days, this determination both animated and consumed her. She threw herself into every exercise, pushing herself to exhaustion, until she felt her muscles tighten and her movements become heavy. But progress was slow, too slow. She grew annoyed by her mistakes, fought against her own body, against her impatience. Sun Tzu watched, silent, never going easy on her. He saw in her a raw yet uncontrolled will, a consuming fire that, if not tamed, would eventually consume her herself. And with every fall, every failure, Aélis couldn't stop that thought from returning, acidic and painful. Methos would undoubtedly have laughed to see her so clumsy with a sword. Darius would have told her to breathe, to learn to accept her weaknesses. And Noe would have taken her in his arms, without asking any questions. But they weren't there, and she was alone in the face of this new reality. So she gritted her teeth, endured, and started over. The weeks that followed in the capital passed with a deceptive calm. Kronos had given no sign of life since his visit to Darius. Despite the absence of direct confrontation, Methos and Duncan knew that Kronos was preparing something. Darius shared their concern. The trio met regularly to exchange ideas and try to anticipate their adversaries' next moves. "This silence is not normal," the Highlander commented, nervously running a hand through his hair. "He's working in the shadows, I'm certain." Methos nodded darkly. Kronos has never been one to rush. He likes to toy with his prey. This apparent calm is his way of making us lose patience. The calm was broken by a series of troubling incidents that heightened the tension weighing on the small group. One evening, upon leaving Joe's bar, Duncan found an envelope slipped under his car's windshield wiper. Inside, a map of Paris marked with several red crosses. Intrigued and worried, he rushed to Darius's place where Methos was already waiting. "Look at this," he said, placing the map on the table. The two immortals leaned over the document. The crosses corresponded to specific locations: Joe's bar, a grocery store Methos had recently visited, a bookstore Duncan regularly frequented. "He's following you," Darius murmured, his gaze darkened by worry. "He's not just following us," Methos corrected. "He wants us to know he's there, that he's watching us." These words sent a chill down his spine, but he hid his unease by studying the map with renewed attention. Around the table, cluttered with maps and hastily scribbled notes, the atmosphere was heavy. The silence of the church seemed to accentuate the urgency of the situation. "Kronos won't wait indefinitely," Methos resumed in a serious voice. "He knows where we are, and he'll strike where it hurts. We must act before he targets one of us." Duncan, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, stared intently at the map. "Then we confront him. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now." Methos looked up at him, skeptical. "That's classic MacLeod. Head on, direct, and without a safety net. You forget who we're dealing with. Kronos isn't just a fighter. He's a strategist, a predator. If you walk up to him like that, he'll crush you." "Then what is your plan, Methos?" Duncan continued, a hint of frustration in his voice. "Wait for him to come to you and decimate everything in his path." Darius, who had been observing in silence until then, calmly put down his glass and intervened in a voice that was composed yet firm. Duncan is right on one point. We cannot afford to wait. But Methos is also right. A direct confrontation would be suicidal. Kronos may individually surpass us, but together we have a chance. The Highlander frowned, turning his gaze toward Darius. And what exactly would that chance be? Darius stepped forward, his gaze piercing, his years of military strategy reflected in his assured tone. Kronos is a man of habits, a predator, as Methos said. And every predator follows a pattern. He observes, he isolates, then he strikes. He wants to divide us, to push us into acting hastily. We must not play his game. We must force him to show himself where we have the advantage. The old immortal managed a half smile. Darius, the general in you will always fascinate me. The priest ignored the barb and continued. If you want him to come to you, you must give him a reason to do so. A provocation, yes, but not one that puts him in a position of strength. Choose a terrain that limits his options. A place where you can restrict his movements and where you will have escape routes if necessary. Methos slowly nodded, reflecting on his words. I've thought of an abandoned mall on the outskirts of Paris. Several exits, dark areas, and enough space to fight. We can turn it into a trap-filled battlefield. Duncan, though skeptical, acquiesced. All right, but we'll need bait. Methos took out a digital tablet and displayed a screenshot of an ultra-confidential exchange network, nestled in the deep layers of the internet. A place where information on valuable historical artifacts and occult legends was exchanged under pseudonyms. Kronos thinks only of power and his legacy, Methos explained, pointing to the screen. I'm going to force him to believe that a threat is looming over his throne. He needs to feel endangered. How? Duncan asked. I'm going to post under an unremarkable alias, a simple image, the seal of the horseman, the ancient rallying symbol we used in the Bronze Age. Darius, whose face had darkened at the sight of the ancient seal, immediately understood. The seal, and you'll accompany it with a message. With a single sentence in Old Sumerian, the shepherd gathers his wolves to reclaim the field. It's a direct reference to our original pact. Only Kronos will recognize that code, Duncan realized. To everyone else, it's an obscure message from an eccentric. Exactly. But to him, it's a declaration of war and an attempt to dispossess him of his myth, Methos said. He'll see that someone is using the horseman mythology to recruit, and he'll immediately think I'm behind it. He'll panic. He won't give us time to organize, and he'll come out of the shadows immediately to intercept the shepherd. The goal is to give him the illusion that he is still the predator, but that his territory is threatened, the priest summarized. He will come, Methos affirmed. He is too proud to let anyone use our history for purposes other than his own. Darius studied the map for a moment before adding, Kronos likes to dominate his adversaries, to take them by surprise. If we want him to expose himself, we must force him to believe that he controls the situation. Be ready to act fast. If you destabilize him at the right moment, it could make all the difference. A silence settled as the three men pondered the implications. Darius finally broke it, his gaze scrutinizing Duncan and Methos in turn. And who will take care of Kronos? The Highlander looked up, and after a brief hesitation, spoke. I will. I have a score to settle with him. Melvin Corrin, it's personal. And if things go wrong? Darius ventured to ask. Methos pulled a pistol from his pocket and placed it on the table. Then I intervened, to neutralize him. A bullet in the leg or shoulder will be enough to give you a chance to regain the upper hand. That's our plan B. Duncan's eyes widened, outraged. And you think I'll agree to take Kronos' head after that? Who do you take me for? The old immortal let out an exaggerated sigh and pretended to think. Would you prefer to die, Highlander? A beautiful, heroic death with your epitaph? Here lies Duncan MacLeod, who died for his impeccable but utterly useless ethics. Seriously, MacLeod, let me help you. This isn't a medieval tournament. Duncan grimaced but said nothing, visibly convinced. Darius seemed reluctant. That is not honorable, Methos, but I suppose we don't have the luxury of ethics in this case. Kronos has killed thousands of people, and he will kill thousands more if we let him. If we have to bend the rules to stop him, then so be it. Duncan took a deep breath and looked at his two companions. All right, so here's the plan. Methos baits Kronos with his messages. When he arrives, I'll be in ambush. Methos stays out of sight, ready to intervene if things go wrong. We prepare the ground to limit his movements and strip him of any advantage. And above all, we don't underestimate Kronos. This is not a simple duel. It's an execution. There's no room for error, Methos added. Then, we won't make any. The strategic meeting had just ended, and Duncan had left the premises in silence, leaving his two friends alone. You seem thoughtful, Darius said softly. I'm thinking, Methos replied without looking up. But that doesn't mean I like what I find. Darius moved forward to sit a few feet away from him, his calm but insistent gaze fixed on his friend. You've always had a knack for brooding over things, but is it really helpful? I manage perfectly well with my usual guilt. Thank you. You're still bothered by what happened with Aélis, aren't you? Why don't you apologize to her? Methos raised his head, his clear eyes hardening like stone. She doesn't want to listen to me. I've already said that. I'm not here to emotionally babysit a young immortal. Duncan wants to play mentor? Fine. That's his problem, not mine. Perhaps she is not ready to hear you yet, but that doesn't mean she never will be. Let time do its work. He managed a bitter smile. And what? I should wait patiently for her to come back and throw new reproaches in my face? Very tempting. I understand you are weary, but the apology you offer is not just for her, it is for you. She doesn't care about my apologies. What I did, I can't fix it with a few words. Maybe, but forgiveness has never been about immediate results. It won't matter then. What will matter is that you will have done your part. The rest will belong to her, and you will have the chance to leave Kronos behind, once and for all. A silence fell between them, charged with tension but also with a strange serenity. Methos met Darius's gaze, where wisdom and patience seemed to intertwine. You are as wise as ever, Methos said with a knowing smile, but without cynicism this time. No, Darius replied with humility. I only speak from experience. The old immortal slowly straightened up, his hands shoved into his pockets. I promise you nothing. I expect nothing, the priest replied gently. But if you truly want to move forward, you know what you have to do. Methos nodded, feeling a little lighter than he had been when he entered. He left the church without another word, but Darius's words continued to resonate within him. Perhaps it was time to change course. The monastery was bathed in apparent calm, but Aélis felt an underlying tension in every stone, every whisper in the austere corridors. The weight of Kronos, though distant, still rested on her shoulders, and she knew that this respite was only an interlude. Sun Tzu, master of the premises, showed none of his concerns, his face remaining impassive. Yet, Aélis noticed that he was always one look ahead, a permanent vigilance that hinted at an invisible threat. When she mentioned it to him, he raised an eyebrow, an imperceptible smile hovering on his lips. Great predators know how to wait, he said softly. And even here, it is wise never to forget that they exist. These words sank into Aélis's mind like a sharp blade. She understood that her stay at the monastery was not only a period of physical training, but also a time of mental preparation. Kronos was waiting in the shadows, and she had to become stronger than her mere survival instinct. The days followed one another in strict discipline, punctuated by rigorous exercises and prolonged meditations. Aélis trained with the novices, sometimes surpassing some of them thanks to her immortal endurance. But she quickly came up against her own limits, and they were not the ones she had imagined. Her body healed quickly, but her impatience held her back. She struck too hard, too fast, without taking the time to analyze, and her more experienced opponents used her haste against her. One morning, as she faced Sun Tzu in training combat, frustration reached its peak. The master dodged effortlessly, turning back each of her assaults with a simple, fluid movement. "Why don't you counterattack?" she launched, out of breath. He stopped abruptly and looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. "Because the attack is useless if it is not fought through," he replied calmly. "You throw yourself at me like a straw fire. Impressive at first glance, but quickly consumed." Aélis clenched her fists. She had never been one to give up, but she was used to progressing quickly. Here, everything seemed slower, more demanding. "So what should I do?" she finally asked, reluctantly. "Learn to wait. Patience is not a weakness, but a weapon. And never forget, true strength comes not from the sword, but from the mind that wields it." His words followed her long after she left the dojo. She brooded, unable to accept the idea that her greatest weakness was not physical, but internal. Every night, when she found herself alone in her austere cell, her thoughts returned tirelessly to the same points: her anger, her helplessness against Kronos, and her bitterness toward Methos and Darius. It was during this time that she found the letter under her door. The envelope, simple and plain, bore the priest's neat handwriting. She slowly picked it up, turning it between her fingers, hesitant. For several days, she left it intact on the small table near her bed, like a weight she wasn't yet ready to lift. Every evening, she looked at it, unable to bring herself to open it. A part of her wanted to ignore it, even burn it, but another, deeper part knew she would eventually give in. It wasn't until much later, after yet another day of failures in training, that she made up her mind. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tore the envelope and unfolded the neatly written sheet. "Aélis, I do not know if you are ready to read these words, but know that I write them without expecting a reply. I do not know if you are still angry with me. In truth, I believe you have every right to be. There are truths that one wishes to offer at the right time, under the right conditions. I would have liked to tell you about what you are, long before reality forced it upon you, but we do not always have the luxury of choosing the moment of revelations. I thought I was doing the right thing by letting you live in ignorance a little longer, hoping you would have more time to simply be yourself. I realize today that this silence hurt you more than I could have imagined. I cannot change what has been done, but I can at least tell you this: I never wanted to manipulate you. Everything I did thinking I was protecting you. If I was wrong, then I accept it, and I ask for your forgiveness. Where you are, far from us, you have the right to feel what you feel. Anger, resentment, pain, all of it is part of the journey. Do not rush to make them disappear, but learn to understand them. They must not dictate your choices, only remind you that you are alive, that you feel. I can only hope that one day, when you are ready, we can talk about all this differently. In the meantime, know that you are not alone. Whatever happens, you never have been. May peace accompany your path. Darius. Aélis reread the letter several times, her fingers clenched around the paper. A strange warmth flooded her, a mix of contradictory emotions that she couldn't name. She wanted to be furious, but something in those words disarmed her. What Darius had written touched her more than she wanted to admit. She placed the letter on the table and lay down on her bed, staring at the ceiling of her room, her mind racing. She wasn't ready to answer him, not yet. But for the first time since her arrival, she felt a little less alone. The fine rain fell silently on the roofs of Paris, draping the city in a gray, almost cottony veil. Passers-by walked briskly, umbrellas in hand, without looking up. In this anonymous crowd, no one noticed her. The car door closed softly behind her. Cassandra remained still on the sidewalk for a moment, her gaze fixed ahead. Her straight silhouette stood out against the pale light of a street lamp, elegantly, without ostentation. Her dark coat seemed to absorb the light. No luggage, no superfluity. She hadn't come to stay. She had come to hunt. Her gaze swept over the surrounding buildings, familiar yet unfamiliar. Years had passed, but the city's lines remained engraved somewhere in her memory. In that ancient memory that time never manages to erase from those of her kind. She inhaled slowly, deeply, as if the air of Paris still carried the traces of the shadows she sought. It had been years since she last returned. The stones had changed, the faces too, but the stench of immortals remained the same, no matter where they hid. She resumed her walk, fluid, precise, indifferent to the passers-by's commotion. A woman rushed past her in the rain. Cassandra didn't even turn her head. Rounding the cathedral, she glanced up at the gargoyles of Notre Dame for a moment. They were still there, frozen in stone, watching over a world they no longer understood. She paid them little more attention. What she was looking for was not in the heights. She took the adjacent alley, walking along the wet cobblestones, her boots making no sound. Her steps led her without hesitation toward a door she hadn't crossed in a long time. A door that, nonetheless, had never truly closed for her. The porch of the Saint Julien-le-Pauvre church appeared around the next corner. Cassandra stopped for a few seconds in front of the heavy wooden doors, her hands in her pockets, her gaze fixed straight ahead. She didn't need to check if he was there. She knew. He had already sensed her. They all sensed it, sooner or later. Only then did she place her hand on the handle and push the door open. The church was silent, peaceful, almost timeless. Candles flickered softly on the altar, casting their light on the centuries-old stones. The world seemed frozen in a silent prayer. Cassandra entered without a sound, like a shadow returned from another century. She paused for a few seconds under the arches of the nave, letting her gaze slide slowly over the empty chairs, over the familiar silhouette waiting for her. Darius stood near the altar, his hands clasped, his face lit by a gentle serenity. He lifted his head at her approach, and a sincere smile formed on his lips. "Cassandra, it's been a long time." She hesitated. Her eyes searched for something in him that she seemed to dread finding. And then she approached, more slowly. The mask fell, just for an instant. "Not long enough," she breathed, but this time without bitterness. Darius opened his arms without a word. She slipped into them almost despite herself. He held her gently, with that quiet tenderness that sought neither to comfort nor to restrain, just to welcome. She closed her eyes for a brief moment. The contact didn't erase anything, but it reminded her that she was not alone. They remained like that for a moment, as if time offered them a truce. Then she pulled back slightly, taking a step back. Her face had closed up again, but something in her eyes still shone with the memory of their embrace. "I came for him. I know he is in Paris." Darius's smile faded gently. He didn't ask any questions. "Kronos," he simply said. She nodded slowly. Her features betrayed no emotion, but her fist imperceptibly clenched against her hip. "You knew?" He looked away for a brief moment, as if to look beyond the walls, beyond the present moment. Then, with a fluid gesture, he indicated a chair. "Would you like to sit down?" No. She remained standing, straight, rooted. "I intercepted a message, a rumor of an alliance against him. I recognize the style. That kind of game. It can only be him, or someone who knows him very well." Darius inclined his head, meditative. There have always been whispers, and sometimes whispers are enough to attract the darkness. She stared at him, her eyes slightly narrowed. "You know something." He remained silent for a second too long. Then he replied, still with that calm that had become his trademark. "I know that hatred attracts hatred, and that Kronos is not the only one who carries the memory of blood." Cassandra's gaze darkened. "You think I should forget him? What he did to me? What they all did to me?" "I believe you will never be able to forget," he replied gently, "and I don't blame you for it. But I also believe that revenge will give you nothing back, that this anger, if you feed it for too long, will eventually devour you." She looked away, catching her breath. "You've changed, Darius. Or perhaps you've forgiven too much," she said, acidly. He seemed neither hurt nor surprised. He shrugged slightly, almost with humility. "It is a risk, yes, but I prefer that risk to the one of losing myself in vengeance." She closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if to chase away a thought too heavy. Then she turned away, taking a few steps toward the exit. Before reaching the doors, she stopped. "You won't be able to stop me," she said without turning around. Darius replied, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, "It is not me you will have to face." She froze for a second, then resumed her walk. Her steps were slower than when she arrived. The church door closed softly behind her. Darius remained alone, his gaze lost in the bluish light of the sanctuary. She had come for Kronos, yes, and he knew that Methos' past was not done claiming its due. But he would say nothing, not yet. He would wait for Methos to return, and he would pray that he was ready. The abandoned mall Methos found was the perfect spot for the trap they'd set. Its crumbling walls and debris-strewn floor provided a stark, menacing backdrop, while its vast size and multiple levels would give them the strategic advantage they needed. To lure Kronos in, Methos had devised an ingenious ploy. Playing on Kronos' natural paranoia, he created fake messages aimed at fictional immortals, hinting at a secret alliance forming against him. These messages were spread through discreet channels, obscure forums, and anonymous networks that Kronos habitually monitored. Every word, every clue was carefully crafted to catch his attention without immediately raising his suspicion. Methos knew that Kronos, always on the lookout for the slightest threat, would eventually intercept this information and conclude he had to act fast to preempt a rebellion. At the heart of the building, a holographic projector had been precisely installed. It displayed Methos' image standing tall with a sword in hand. The illusion was designed to give Kronos the impression that he finally had the chance to confront his old comrade face to face. The image had to be both striking and believable. To complete the confusion, Methos and Duncan had covered the central area with mirrors of various sizes, salvaged or installed. These surfaces, deliberately cracked or misaligned, were meant to create visual distortion. The Methos hologram was thus multiplied into countless reflections, and Kronos' every move would be echoed, disorienting him even before the fight began. When Duncan intervened, Kronos would suddenly see dozens of potential adversaries in the shattered mirrors, increasing the time it took him to distinguish the real Duncan from the illusion. Methos and Duncan had spent hours reviewing the mall's blueprints and testing different scenarios. Duncan was positioned further back, taking cover behind a massive support beam near the center of the action. Although Kronos would certainly sense Duncan's presence as he approached the hologram, Duncan had made sure to keep enough distance so that the signal of his presence wouldn't overpower Methos's. His role was clear: intervene as soon as Kronos approached the hologram, seizing the advantage of surprise to engage in the duel. Methos, for his part, was perched high up on a metallic platform, his rifle equipped with a high-precision scope. His vantage point offered a clear view of the field of mirrors, allowing him to track Kronos' movements, even through the chaos of reflections. He was tense and focused. Kronos was not just an old companion. He embodied the specter of a past the ancient immortal had been trying to outrun for millennia. Every detail mattered. Every second could be the difference between victory and a fatal failure. The plan hinged on perfect execution. The hologram had to hold Kronos just long enough for Duncan to step in, and Methos had to be ready to adjust the strategy if necessary. They knew Kronos was a cunning and unpredictable opponent, and they had no room for error. The setting of their trap was steeped in an oppressive silence. Methos and Duncan, already in position for an hour, scanned their surveillance devices. They had installed a network of discrete cameras around the mall, linked to their phones. A silent alarm, programmed to trigger upon Kronos' approach, would give them a visual and vibrational signal as soon as he crossed a predefined perimeter. Suddenly, the notification popped up on their screens. A silhouette was moving with measured steps toward the main entrance. On the camera feed, Kronos appeared, dressed in black, his face etched with concentrated ferocity. His sword hung at his side, and his every movement seemed calculated, as if he already anticipated a trap. He didn't rush, preferring to advance slowly to analyze his surroundings. His natural wariness pushed him to examine every shadow, every corner, searching for the slightest sign of an ambush. As the camera showed Kronos crossing the main entrance door, Methos felt a familiar vibration run through his entire body. He adjusted the position of his rifle on the high platform. He knew Kronos had also sensed his presence and would eventually spot the hologram. Everything now hinged on Kronos interpreting this illusion as a genuine confrontation. Duncan, meanwhile, stood ready behind the massive beam that concealed him. His drawn sword faintly gleamed in the darkness, and he took deep breaths to quell his excitement. He didn't like the idea of hiding, but he knew this strategy was necessary. Kronos wouldn't be easily surprised, and every advantage, even a minor one, could make the difference. As Kronos advanced through the hall, his steps echoing on the dilapidated floor, Methos felt a surge of adrenaline wash over him. The seconds seemed to stretch into eternity, every move Kronos made intensifying the tension in the air. All that remained was to wait for the opportune moment for Duncan to spring into action and engage the fight. Kronos finally stopped, a few dozen meters from the Methos hologram, his hand tightly gripping his sword hilt. The buzz he'd felt confirmed the presence of his old comrade. A predatory smile stretched his lips as he observed Methos' seemingly determined posture, ready to challenge him. Finally, Kronos muttered, "So you found your courage, brother." He took a step forward, but a fraction of a second later, his smile vanished. He froze, his eyes narrowing. Something was wrong. A second vibration in his head indicated that Methos was not alone. Before he could react further, Duncan leaped out from his hiding spot behind a metal pillar, his sword already raised to strike. Kronos spun around just in time to parry the blow, the steel of the blades ringing throughout the building. "Highlander!" Kronos hissed. "Always the White Knight." Duncan didn't answer, focused on the clash. The two immortals exchanged a series of swift, powerful blows, their blades tracing sparkling arcs in the darkness. Kronos moved with surprising agility, every motion a testament to centuries of mastery. Duncan, for his part, remained fluid, using a combination of speed and technique to compensate for his opponent's raw strength. With every strike, Duncan subtly shifted the fight toward an area where the large mirrors installed in the atrium reflected their battle. He focused on guiding Kronos without arousing suspicion, using the reflections to create unexpected angles and momentary illusions. With a rapid move, Duncan feigned an attack on Kronos' left flank, forcing him to pivot to defend. Capitalizing on the opening, he slid his blade under his opponent's guard, cutting deeply into his right arm. Kronos recoiled with a grunt of pain, but he held his sword firmly despite the blood dripping onto the floor. "You think that's enough?" the horseman sneered, a glint of madness in his eyes. Duncan didn't reply, preferring to save his energy for the fight. He followed up with a series of strikes, alternating between direct attacks and calculated movements that constantly forced Kronos to reposition. With his opponent weakened, Duncan quickly found another opening. This time, his blade pierced Kronos' defense, inflicting a wound to his thigh. Kronos staggered slightly, his breathing growing heavier, but he showed no sign of giving up. Furious, Kronos launched a desperate counterattack, striking with a force that would have disarmed a less experienced fighter. Duncan, however, managed to deflect the blow, using a nearby metal beam as support to absorb some of the impact. "You're just a pawn in Methos' game," Kronos roared, striking with all his might. "Maybe," the Highlander retorted as his opponent's sword hammered the metal. "But you're the one who's going to lose this game." Stunned by the impact, Kronos then attempted a feint, aiming for Duncan's flank, but the latter pivoted nimbly, blocking the attack. In the movement, he managed to disarm Kronos with a precise gesture. The former horseman of the Apocalypse sword slid onto the floor, out of reach. But before Duncan could land the final blow, Kronos grabbed him by the throat, pulling him into a fierce struggle. The two immortals rolled on the ground, each trying to gain the upper hand. Finally, Duncan managed to plant his knee into Kronos' chest, forcing him to let go. With a spring, he got back up, sword in hand. Kronos, wounded and panting, tried to crawl toward his weapon, but Duncan reached him first and immobilized him with a precise thrust to the flank. At that moment, Methos slowly descended from the platform, his weapon lowered, but still ready to intervene if necessary. He stopped a few meters from the two immortals. "End it, MacLeod," he said simply, his gaze dark. Kronos, lying on the ground, looked up at Methos, a mixture of defiance and hatred in his eyes. "You never had the guts," he spat, "always hiding behind others." Methos didn't respond. Duncan raised his sword, his gaze fixed on Kronos, who was now kneeling, disarmed, and weakened. The face of his enemy bore an expression of defiance to the very end. With a sure movement, Duncan finished the fight, putting an end to millennia of terror. The next moment was suspended in a deafening silence, shattered by the explosion of light that accompanied the quickening. A white mist enveloped Kronos' inert body, rising into the air before fragmenting into bolts of lightning that struck Duncan with unbelievable violence. The mirrors around them shattered in a chaos of cracking glass, each detonation amplifying the event's intensity. The lights flickered, casting shifting shadows on the walls, while arcs of electricity swirled around Duncan, merging with him. His screams echoed, mingled with the raw power of the energy that seemed to simultaneously tear him apart and strengthen him. When the calm finally returned, Duncan stood motionless for a moment, his sword pointed toward the ground, his shoulders slightly slumped under the weight of the experience he had just undergone. Methos slowly emerged from the shadow. He approached without a word, his gaze meeting Duncan's. A simple nod passed between them. They both knew their mission was accomplished. The weight of the history they had unraveled rested on their shoulders, but for now, a sense of relief prevailed. The old immortal broke the silence by quickly surveying the surroundings. The building, with the remnants of the projectors and the shattered glass, bore the clear marks of their fight. "We can't leave it like this," he murmured, almost to himself. He pulled a small electronic device from his pocket, a remote control he had prepared in advance. Their plan included one final act of concealment: a fire. Kronos himself had provided the inspiration in a final piece of sarcasm. He pressed the button, and discrete charges, strategically placed around the building, activated. The fire started quickly, licking at the walls and consuming the remnants of their trap. Flames danced in the gloom, casting a reddish glow on the two immortals as they quietly walked away. "If I have to start over, it will be on ashes." Kronos had no idea that his own prophecy would be fulfilled so quickly and at his own expense. They left the premises before the flames fully spread, disappearing into the night as the mall turned into a gigantic blaze.